IT decision makers claim that legacy systems, something that Gina talked about in the previous conversation as well, legacy systems are preventing them from harnessing those digital technologies that they need to grow and become more efficient. Now think about that for a second. 90% of organizations can't make use of digital transformation properly. They can't make use of the incredibly valuable information that's stored within their organization because of the legacy systems that they're using. That's a crazy situation. And it's a big problem. But it's okay. There is a way, of course, to solve this problem. There is a way to unblock that process. There is a way for you to make a difference. In short, it's time to be a hero. It's time to lead that revolution that we referenced in the session title. Now, okay, maybe I'm being a little bit over dramatic here, but maybe not, right? If you can solve the problem of 90% of the CIOs out there, that's not a bad start. And of course, that problem that we're talking about is the legacy systems that we have in operation today. So how do we solve that problem? Well, as with anything, we need a three-step process. That's my view on all of the problems in the world today. And our 3 steps for solving this are as follows. Firstly, we need to be able to identify the legacy systems that are causing the issues. We need to be able to spot the telltale signs and symptoms of this happening. And I'll share some hints and tips in the next few slides on how to do that. Then we need to educate the organization about the issues that these legacy systems are causing and about the benefits that a modern information management system can deliver. By doing that, we actually become the trusted advisor within the organization. We become the person that gets consulted on how to deliver the real change that the whole organization is craving. And finally, you can sit back. Well, sort of, right? This is the point in time where an organization like AODocs steps in to help you manage that change from legacy to modern, to help you migrate content and processes and applications and take them from being a problem to being a huge business enabler. 3 simple steps: identify, educate, and migrate. Let's take a look at each of those in a little bit more detail, though. And the ideal place to start really is by identifying legacy systems in an organization, as I said. But what is a legacy system? Well, by definition, a legacy system is any software or hardware that has since been surpassed by better technology. Now, in reality, that can mean a lot of things. And actually, one person's legacy system might be another person's holy grail. But I want to go off on a tangent for a few seconds. The interesting thing here with legacy systems is that we don't put up with legacy technology within our personal lives. Let me show you what I mean by that. What if we were still using technology within our personal lives from, let's say, 2002? Take a look on the screen. We'd still be using dedicated MP3 players. We'd still be using chunky Nokia mobile phones, even using Palm Pilots and Blackberries. Remember those? Time has moved on. That's my point here. And so have our expectations. But what about within our we want to illustrate is the year in which they were released. Take a look at Documentum, for example, released in 1990. So 12 years before all of that ancient technology that we looked at on the previous slide. This is software that no doubt has been through several iterations since then, but that still works based on 30-year-old design and logic. How on earth can that not be a legacy system? This is software. All of these are software that were born before the cloud even existed. In many cases, before the iPhone and mobile devices, even before good old Google was around. This is what legacy software looks like. So let's also take a look at 3 symptoms as well that you can use to spot situations where legacy software exists, even without knowing what software it is. but also some of the areas in which it's failing us. So first up, let's talk silos. This is a term that we've all heard numerous times in the past few years, right? And never in a good way. One of the telltale signs of legacy systems is if people are talking about silos of information. They're talking about systems that don't talk to each other, or that perhaps they have to rekey information from one system to another. Or in certain circumstances, they even have to string these systems together using RPA tools. That's a telltale sign. The second sign is if they've still got masses of in-house servers. Oh, and the hordes of IT staff that are required simply to manage them. Now, I'm not saying that everyone needs to go to the cloud. That's not what I'm saying here, despite the huge advantages that come with doing so. But my point is that often with legacy systems, that's actually not a decision that's in your hands anyway, as a lot of these systems simply cannot operate in the cloud. And even if they do, it's in some sort of containerized or hosted environment that gets you the cost savings of moving to the cloud, but little else. And finally, let me ask you a question. Has anyone ever heard of a legacy information management system that people liked using? I can almost hear the chuckles from the audience now, even though you're all on mute. I certainly haven't heard of an information management system, a legacy one that people liked using. Why? Well, a lot of the times it was due to horrible user interfaces. That all of those horrible interfaces that came with document management and enterprise content management systems. Many times you needed a degree in astrophysics simply to file a document in some of them. And if you hear people complaining about using an information management tool, chances are it's to do with the interface, and chances are it's a legacy tool that they're using. So 3 telltale signs there of how to spot a legacy system. And I wonder how many of you are sat back at the moment thinking, yeah, I can see those symptoms in my virtual office at the moment. And to add a little bit more misery to the situation at the moment, let's take a quick look at why those legacy systems are such an issue. Well, for me, there are 3 key drawbacks. Firstly, they're expensive. And often they're peppered with hidden costs, and we'll dive into this in a little bit more detail in a few slides' time. But things like annual maintenance fees, hardware and network usage fees. And if you want to scale those legacy systems, if you want to add more users, typically you have to add more hardware as well. That's the way that in-house systems work. Secondly, they're risky, right? So legacy systems are typically updated via versions or upgrades, and those require your company to perform huge upgrade projects that have an impact on your business operations, and often actually require you to bring in external consultants to do those operations. For that reason, and that reason alone, many companies running on legacy systems actually fail to keep their application using the latest techniques or technologies. And even if they're trying to, there's certainly nowhere near as robust as fully cloud-based solutions due to that patchwork nature of old meets new. They're also inefficient because, as we said earlier, adding new features to these to keep up has a business impact in terms of those upgrade projects and so on. So if those are the issues of legacy systems, that's all great. None of these are new though. So why are these issues of particular interest now? Well, again, 3 reasons really. Firstly, the scale at which content and data is growing within our business is scary. There's almost 5 times growth of data expected in the next 2 years, with over 50% of that, 57% to be exact, of that being unstructured content, the type of content that is typically handled by information management systems. Secondly, let's throw in a buzzword. It's all about business agility. I mentioned this earlier, but it is actually. Modern information management solutions can be used not just by trained experts, but by everybody. And more importantly than that, so-called citizen developers, or just regular users to you and I, can actually build apps on top of these solutions really quickly and easily using low-code tools. All of that together really does offer business agility. And finally, as we said earlier, these legacy systems typically cost a lot of money. And what you find is that often there are multiple legacy systems doing the same thing within the business. So consolidating those into a single cloud-based solution delivers a significantly reduced total cost of ownership. And I want to dive into that for a few seconds. That total cost of ownership, or TCO, is exactly what it says, right? It's the complete amount of money that's spent on running a solution. And this is especially important when you're comparing a legacy system to a new cloud-based system. Part of the process that you have to go through to migrate, right? It's very easy to compare apples with oranges here and not to get a true representation. And the main reason for this, well, legacy systems tend to be on-premises and modern systems tend to be cloud-based. And with that come differences in terms of who pays for what behind the scenes. Let me give you an example. Is a legacy system that costs £1,000 per year in maintenance better value than the cloud-based solution that costs $2,000 per year in subscriptions? Well, at face value, it may appear so, but what you're not factoring in are the running costs of the on-premise solution. Things like your in-house data center, the staff required to run that data center, operating system and database costs for your servers, and so on and so forth. And you can see them on the screen at the moment. All of these you have to pay for with an on-premise solution. All of those are typically wrapped up in the subscription cost for a cloud solution. Now, this is a topic that I can talk on for hours, but I'm going to leave it there for today. I just want to illustrate that a true total cost of ownership analysis is a vital element as you're looking at digital transformation and legacy modernization. So back to that main flow of the conversation, digital transformation. And the funny thing is, everyone says that they're already doing this. I defy any organization to say that they're not doing digital transformation. But despite saying that they're doing it, many people that I talk to certainly don't think that they're actually doing it very well, which I guess is borne out by the numbers that we saw right at the start of the presentation. So what's the answer? Well, in my view, the answer is that it really is actually time to transform. It's time to stop paying lip service to digital transformation, but to actually do something real. And the key to that is to stop talking and start doing. And as you can see, I love my 3-step slides. Everything can be fixed by these. So on this one, all I want to say really is that the initial realization is that legacy systems really don't work. We've just discussed that for the past 16 slides or so. Legacy systems are posing more problems than they're solving. And as a result, we all know that modernization is needed. But all too often, the biggest challenge is that we don't know how to get things moving. So what can we do? Well, of course, we can go straight into another 3-step slide, but this time with some real steps. And step 1 here for me is all about understanding what you currently have. A system review, if you like, that includes who uses the systems that you have, why they use them, what data and content do those systems contain. Without that core system review, you don't stand a hope of performing digital transformation. You simply can't go anywhere if you don't know what you have. Once you do have that, though, you can decide what you actually want to move, and of equal importance, what you don't want to move. Now, think about it. Just because you're moving house, it doesn't mean that you have to take all of your stuff with you. And exactly the same applies when you're moving your systems. Why take years worth of garbage with you? Just ditch it, or ditch what you don't need, certainly, and move on. And finally, it's prioritization time. You need to decide on the value and or the importance to the business of these systems. But at the same time, you need to take into account the amount of content that's stored within those systems and also the amount of regular activity within that system. Again, back to deciding what to take and what not to take. If you have a system that no one's accessed for 3 years, do you really need to move it and modernize it and digitally transform it? I would argue that maybe you don't. All of these 3 steps, though, in tandem, allow you to decide which order to migrate your systems in. And which systems do you want to migrate is often the question. Which systems can I migrate is a question I get a lot. Well, you can migrate and modernize pretty much any type of system. So, from really old tools, and I say that with the greatest of respect, tools like FileNet, like IBM CMod, like Mobius, and even Lotus Notes. We find a lot of Lotus Notes installations around still. All of those can be migrated, of course. But increasingly, we're seeing people migrating newer flavors of systems, things like SharePoint, like Dropbox and Box, even just regular file systems. All of those see a benefit when being migrated to a more modern system. And bear in mind, we're not just moving content here, but we're also moving things like metadata. We're moving different versions of documents and content. We're moving user permissions, we're moving workflows, we're moving applications that are built on top of these systems, and so on and so forth. So if that's where you're coming from, the legacy sources, if you like, what does the destination look like? What do you want to move to? What is a modern information management system that can help you do digital transformation and get you over the pain of living with legacy? Well, I'm going to talk about modern content services in abstract terms, but of course, AO Docs is an example of such a system. So a modern content services solution, or platform as they're often known, should be a flexible, cloud-native platform that's designed to modernize the way that businesses work. Not just to digitize paper-based processes, which was very often the case with document management and ECM systems, but truly to modernize the way that a business works. In equal measure, it should reduce that total cost of ownership that we talked about earlier on. It should increase that business agility. It should allow you to run and democratize content-rich processes and allow anybody within the business to both use those, but also build those. And it should do it in a highly scalable environment while still offering enterprise-grade security, traceability, and privacy. That's the baseline. That's an absolute minimum for what this should be delivering. But beyond that, there are multiple layers of detail that I want to dive into very quickly. So for me, a content services platform is a business application platform first and foremost. But what do I mean by that, right? Well, it means that we provide everyday users with access to do things like defining workflows visually and easily. But it also allows them to deploy those workflows against one document, one member of staff, or 1,000 members of staff and millions of documents if they want to. It allows them to do all of that with the security and the comfort of that full audit trail behind them. So everything that's done can be tracked and reported against. It allows them to do that with reports that are both predefined, but also with dashboards that allow you to visualize those insights very, very quickly and very dynamically. It allows them to do that not just in the core environment, but by connecting content to other line of business systems as well that they use, whether that's Gmail or Outlook, Salesforce or SAP. And as I mentioned earlier, it also provides a low-code customization capability that allows any user not to have to go to IT to get changes made to the system, but allows them to do those themselves within strict boundaries with guardrails around. So it's a business application first and foremost, as I say, but it still provides all of those core functionality and capabilities that you would expect from a traditional document management or enterprise content management system. So that means that you have the ability to work with content and documents right from creation through collaboration, storage, sharing, retention, and ultimately the disposition or destruction of that information. Cradle to grave document management as a core part of this. So those traditional document management capabilities delivered via it also provides real-time collaboration on content. So think about it, the ability to go in and as part of a team, collaboratively work on documents, work on spreadsheets, work on presentations, something that's very rarely seen within the legacy document management world. And by delivering this via the cloud, organizations are getting access to the latest and the most powerful AI capabilities and smart content processing. So what is an information management solution or a modern information management solution? What does it look like? Well, for me, it's a cloud content services platform offering business application processing with full document control built on and for a cloud world. That's what we're looking for. And that's the technical view of things. Those are the features and functions, if you like. But let's come back up a little bit and think about what this delivers to the business, why this helps us do digital transformation. Well, we're talking about enabling you to take real advantage of the cloud here. That's the first thing. We're talking about allowing you to leverage the cloud's built-in elasticity to allow you to scale up or down as you wish, to allow you to receive continuous updates at the click of a button without having to run 3-month-long projects to do an upgrade. It allows you to achieve that at nearly infinite scale without having to add more servers and more software, but doing that behind the scenes. We're talking about enabling you to reduce that total cost of maintenance and the hardware related overheads. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, we're talking about increasing that business agility. We're talking about giving business users with a familiar Google-like user interface that they'll actually enjoy using. Now, for me, those are 3 very compelling business reasons to look at modern information management as a foundation for digital transformation. So that's been a whistle-stop tour through how modern information management can help you drive digital transformation, the challenges with legacy, and really why modern information management should replace your legacy equivalent as soon as possible. But before I go, I want to leave you with one final 3-step slide, of course, and just some closing thoughts before we go to Q&A. So the first point here is that, and I've rammed this home several times and I'm going to keep doing it, right? It's that legacy systems really are crippling organizations today. As we saw, 90% of CIOs are having issues with them, and anyone who can offer help to solve that issue is incredibly valuable to an organization. The second point here is that this isn't an unknown issue. We all know that we need to change something, but often the issue, as I said earlier, is where to start. And for many people, the solution to the problem just seems to be too far away, too difficult to implement, too big a hurdle to overcome, if you like. So they just continue with the status quo. But they're wrong. That solution is possible and it's obtainable in a few simple steps, as we've seen. But as I said earlier, in order to do that, in order to start this revolution, we have to stop talking and start doing. And that feels like a good place for me to stop talking And just to let you know that more information can, of course, be found on our website at aodocs.com. And with that, I'd like to hand back to Aaron for the Q&A session.
Thank you, Dave. That was very enlightening. Very nice job presenting. Thank you so much for that information.
No problem.
Very good. So, questions and answers. If you have a question, feel free to raise your hand, or you can chat with me privately, and I will then take the question and give that to Dave. So give me a moment here, Dave. Okay, I have one question here. What happens if I can't get my data out of an old system, but I can't afford to lose it? What do I do?
Really good question. And the comedian in me wants to say, well, you're in real trouble in that case. But actually, that's 99% of the time not the case. It's very, very rare for us not to be able to get content out of old systems. Now, I did say earlier, one of the challenges with legacy systems is that they don't tend to talk to other systems. They don't tend to new system. That's the worst case scenario. Normally we can get access to files and we can run reports that generate the associated metadata and user permissions and whatnot. So it does vary. There are systems that are harder to get content and data out of than others. But 99% of the time we can get that data and content out of the old system.
Yeah, that's good to know, because there's definitely quite a few systems out there that I know organizations have. They store the information because they're not allowed to delete it or get rid of it. And so it doesn't make it very difficult to migrate.
Absolutely.
Our next question is, you didn't talk about artificial intelligence. Used in a migration process. Why not?
Do you know what? I talk about artificial intelligence in most of my presentations, so I thought I'd try and do one without talking about AI. But hey, it's got to come into the conversation at some point, right? Yeah, AI is a fantastic tool to be used in the migration process, right? Right from the simple things like classifying content as it comes into a new system. So, if we're talking about a 20-year-old legacy content store, the chances are the metadata or the tagging that gets associated with that content isn't the best in the world. And, content that was tagged 20 years ago certainly won't be anywhere near as good and as clean as content that's tagged today. So what we use AI to do a lot of the time is, when we're moving content from an old system to a new system, is to actually pass it through modern AI algorithms that retag it. So we don't lose the tags that are there, but we enrich them. And we do a lot better job of OCRing them, of using zonal recognition, of using neural networks and AI-based tools to do a much better job of doing that entity extraction. But even before that, one of the big things that I talked about earlier was deciding what content to move across to your new systems. And we can use AI to look at that as well. You can tie up AI with analytics to go back through to categorize content, to look for duplicates, something as simple as that, to figure out how many pictures of, Deirdre's cat are stored on the central file server, and to decide and categorize what you should and what you shouldn't migrate across, or at least to do a first pass on that. So yeah, AI is being used throughout the whole system and throughout the whole migration process to make it much more intelligent and much more scalable, to allow us to do that on millions, if not billions of content.
Well, so that's perfect. So you're using artificial intelligence to identify what should be moved if it's important, but also at the same time making the content intelligent. That's brilliant.
Sorry, we lost you for a second there, Aaron.
Oh, sorry, I'm back. I said it's a brilliant idea, using artificial intelligence to make the content more intelligent, but also be able to identify what content to move what to keep and what not to, versus just trying to do a big lift and shift of everything. So it's a brilliant idea.
Good stuff.
See, I have one more question here, and this is a good one. If I move to a new system now, what's going to stop me from being in the exact same place 10 years from now?
That's a great question. So basically, you know, replacing a legacy system with a new system that then becomes a legacy system in 10 years' time. Yeah,
Exactly.
that's a great question. And I think the one thing that there's a number of different answers to that, but one of the core ones is to think about that upgrade capability, right? So one of the biggest challenges with on-premise legacy systems is the upgrades, and is the amount of pain that it takes to do an upgrade. Anyone that's ever upgraded from SharePoint 2010 to SharePoint 2013, for example, will you know have been through that process. It wasn't a seamless upgrade. One of the nice things about the way that modern software is designed, and certainly the way that cloud software is designed, is that upgrades can be deployed a lot quicker and faster and more seamlessly to the user. So in the majority of circumstances, I mean, if you use Salesforce, for example, you don't know when upgrades have been done unless they're changing the interface in a massive way. You know, these things get rolled out, they get tested on the millions of users that there are running cloud systems, and it allows you to be constantly up to date. So in theory, you should never get to a situation where your software is even a day behind, let alone 10 years behind, you know, a modern solution. That allows you to roll that out. I think another couple because you couldn't do it. That's very different today as well. You know, one of the terms that you'll hear a lot is open systems and API first. And essentially what these are talking about is ways that you can connect these systems together. And I think the modern mentality about developing software is not that you think that your piece of software is the most important piece to a business and everybody else should just hook into you. You realize that your software is part of an ecosystem. It's part of a unique set of different tools and services that each business will collectively bring together and have their own unique ecosystem inside. So modern software is designed to work in that manner, to plug into other pieces, to make sure that it can talk to, you know, maybe Google's AI capabilities today, but Facebook's tomorrow if they become, you know, the leader in AI. So I think that insulates you, that future proofs you, and means that you won't ever get into that silo effect again. You'll always be able to you know, work in that ecosystem mentality. And finally, you know, cloud providers and modern information management systems now allow you to get your data out a lot quicker than those old systems did. You know, we talked about some of the challenges with getting content out. The new systems have got those APIs, they've got those mechanisms for allowing you to offboard yourself from a cloud solution as well as onboard very easily. So hopefully we'll never get to the situation where modern software becomes legacy, whether it's 10 years or 20 years time.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And the idea of proprietary software, I think, is long gone or fast moving out. It's very good to see that is happening today. I did have one more question that pop up, and that is, how long does it actually take to migrate a system? I mean, some companies have millions, if not more than that, of documents in their systems, and they need time to access and move it all. How long does that usually take?
How long's a piece of string? I, I think that the best way to discuss how long it takes is more to look at the strategy. And for those of us that have ever done document scanning, it's very similar in terms of migration to the strategies that we used for document scanning. You know, a lot of people actually run obviously small pilot projects to get things up and running, but then look at doing day forward migration. So, new content coming into the system doesn't go into the legacy system, but goes into the new system. Any time that content is accessed from the legacy system, it doesn't get put back into that system, it gets put into the new system. So there's a sort of a rolling migration. That's a common way to deal with massive data sets that need migrating, and in scenarios where you can't turn that system off and it's going to take too long to do that migration. But that said, content can be moved very quickly nowadays. I mean, we certainly ran some tests a little while ago, and we're talking about several hundred thousands of content items that can be migrated every hour. So there are large data sets out there, but we can migrate those systems. There are strategies to do that behind the scenes and to do that progressively if they need to as well.
Perfect. David, that's all the questions I have for today. Wonderful presentation. Really appreciate you taking time out of your day to speak to us about this topic, and look forward to speaking with you again soon. Thank you.
Absolutely, Aaron. Thank you. And can I just say a huge thank you to Crawford Systems for putting this event on today. I think it's fantastic. We all miss the face-to-face events, but this is a fantastic replacement given the circumstances.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So, folks, we'll be getting our next presentation in about 3 minutes.
Set up, please. Okay, next up is Dave Parks from InChoice. Okay, I think we're ready to begin. I'd like to welcome Dave Parks, CEO of InChoice, to deliver a talk about digital transformation. Thanks very much, Dave. Over to you.